Good evening. My name is Julian, and you're watching The Forum with Julian Torones. This is the first episode that I've got prepared for you guys, a table worth sitting at, and that is exactly what The Forum is. It's a table worth sitting at. We like to have timeless conversations for the modern world. Before we start, I want to thank La Luna Cafe, Tea and Dessert Bar, for having me here, allowing me to record on their premises. I really appreciate it. My drink of choice from here is the red velvet latte, the hot red velvet latte, so that's what I've got going for you guys. But before you sit down and listen, have yourself a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a cup of water, anything to hydrate yourself, a journal, a pen, to take some notes, and we're just going to get right into it. First thing, I want to talk about who I am. I graduated in May of this year, and ever since then, it's been a wild journey. Since graduation, I've become a content creator on Instagram with over 15,000 followers. People that I was certain were going to stay in my life have left my life, and people that I never expected to be back into my life came back into my life. I never realized how fast life would move after high school, and I could have never expected this. I could have never expected the events that came after graduating. During my time in high school, I had an emphasis on music. I was in music all of middle school and all of high school, but primarily my focus really picked up in high school. I played saxophone for all 4 years. I played saxophone for the marching band and our concert bands. My senior year, I was a drum major, so I conducted for our marching band, and my last 2 years of high school, I conducted for our indoor winds or our concert winds. Similarly, I was in orchestra for 3 years of high school, that's sophomore through my senior year. I wanted another perspective on music. Obviously, band and orchestra are very different as far as instrumentation and the style of music and the overall method of teaching. Alongside musicianship, I have a strong passion for poetry, primarily romance poetry. I have my own book out. It is called The Velvet Dress Chronicles. For those that keep up with my writing, I do have another book coming very, very soon. I hope to release it in December, but I digress. I was raised a stoic, just as my father was, and that will be a huge, huge pillar in the forum, right? We're going to continually talk about the four bases of stoicism and how that ties into everything that we talk about from here on out. A hobby that I've picked up more so outside of high school rather than in high school is MMA. I do train MMA 4 to 5 times a week. I wrestled a little bit in high school. I have a little bit of a background in combat sports, but primarily MMA. Secondly, I want to talk about why this podcast is called The Forum. The ancient Greeks had forums. These were congregational settings where people would meet up and exchange ideas. It was a place of debate, and it was a place for people to hear each other out on different topics. Similarly, we're going to do that here on this podcast. We're going to talk about different ideas, different kinds of methods for personal growth, creativity, philosophy, and lifestyle. Here on this first episode that I prepared for you guys, I'd like to talk about something rather small, but it is quite a nice anecdote, I believe, that can help set everything up for the next episodes to come. As a local here in Las Vegas, it gets hot. Las Vegas is very hot. It gets up to 120 degrees in the summer, and year-round it's rather warm. However, during the colder seasons, fall, winter, and early spring, it is nice out. You see people walking around more, you see people celebrating more. A lot of festivals happen during these times because it's more convenient for us to be out and about during the colder months. Alongside the colder months, you have your winter traditions, your fall traditions, which I truly adore. I realized this about a year ago. I was waiting for fall to come around. As September was cooling down into October, I was waiting for a sudden temperature shift, a sudden change in the weather for me to be out and about, but sometimes here in Las Vegas, it's hot all the way up until November. In the moment, I didn't realize this, but as I was waiting for the colder temperatures to come around, before I knew it, I blinked and it was December. All the festivities, all the hangouts, all the activities that I wanted to partake in were now behind me. Why? Because I waited for the colder months rather than just embracing what I had in the moment and partaking in what I wanted to do, but instead I waited for something so minute, so unimportant. And I think about it today, and I think a lot of us can really relate to this in a sense that we wait for something or we want something that we realize we already have. As I was waiting for these cooler months, I expected the festivities to come with them, but it seems that no matter what, the hangouts, the activities, the fun things that we do in fall and winter, they scraped by me. I think as people, we get so caught up in what's so unimportant, what's so small, what's so insignificant that we miss the big picture. We seem to worry about things that are just so insignificant that we lose the opportunity to truly enjoy what we have in the moment. During this period of waiting that I was doing, I would always complain about the weather. It's too hot for this, it's too hot for that. And that also ruined my overall time of that year. I was always negative about the weather, and as silly as it may sound, the weather would ruin my day. Genuinely, I would let the weather ruin my day, and I would live like that for weeks until, again, as I said, I blinked and it was December, and it was 2 weeks before Christmas, and everything that I wanted to do went out the window because I was too worried about the weather. I feel we often forget to live in the moment and live our truth as it is. We worry too much about altering the reality that we can't technically alter, right? As much as I would have wanted to control the weather and crank the world AC down, I couldn't. And that bothered me. And because I let this bother me, I let it interrupt all of my daily activities and my mood overall. The point that I'm trying to get at is, as people, we find ourselves worrying about the wrong things. We seem to want to alter the reality that we can't alter. We try to change things or be frustrated about things that we can't control. That costs us our happiness, that costs us our temperance, and that costs us our overall way of life. If there's something in your life that you can't seem to control or you can't seem to get a grasp of, let it be. Let it be, because you're wasting your time. By the time you think you've figured out how to fix this problem, chances are it won't be a problem anymore. Chances are it's something that doesn't even bother you anymore. But you thought it bothered you because you couldn't control it. I think it's important to understand the difference between the things that we can control and the things that we can't control. And that is a very common thing that we focus on in the philosophy of Stoicism, is what you can and cannot control. So accept what you can't control. Accept it for what it is. You can't control it. It is what it is. Don't let it stop you from enjoying and being the person that you want to be. Obviously, the anecdote of me not being able to control the weather is a very vague and open-ended story, but regardless, I think anybody can take something from it, because we all struggle with being frustrated at certain things that are just out of our grasp, certain things that we just can't control, certain things that we can't seem to fix no matter how hard we try. And the more you try to fix something that is out of your reach, you will find yourself to be frustrated, as I was during the times of waiting for the weather to cool down. When you come to terms with what you can't control and you've accepted it for what it is crucial to think about what you can control. And most of the times it's going to be yourself, how you feel about the situation, how you feel about the matter at hand. Being able to control oneself is very important. It puts you ahead of a lot of people that don't understand that you will always have control over yourself. You will always have control of your feelings, your emotions, the way that you choose to react to things. And it's part of life. You're going to find yourself being frustrated at a lot of things, and some of those things you'll be able to fix. You'll be able to have a say in whatever the problem is, and sometimes you won't. And you need to be prepared for what you're going to do when there's something that you can't fix or you can't control. Control yourself, conquer your thoughts, and you'll be able to conquer anything that you truly set your mind to. To put it in short, I was frustrated at the weather. I was upset because the weather wasn't dropping, and that is something that I obviously cannot control, and therefore I lost the opportunity to do the things that I wanted to do because of the weather, right? I think as people, we struggle to make amends with the idea that there's just certain things that we have no say in, there's certain things that we can't control, and that causes us to be frustrated, and we often lose control of ourselves. And as I said, that's the only thing we really can control is ourselves. But within the frustration and within the hardship of not being able to accept that you can't control certain things, you start to lose control of yourself, and that's a recipe for disaster. That's a big problem. Not being able to come to terms with the idea that you are not in control of everything is detrimental. I think it's a huge problem, and I've been the victim to that problem many, many times. And that is why I strive every day to really push the agenda that you can't control certain things. And you just gotta be with it. You gotta be okay with it. And it's a beautiful thing to know that you can control yourself, because nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take away your self-control unless you allow it, right? And for you to allow it, it's because you really allowed it. Like I said, you are in control of how you feel about certain things. You're in control about how you feel about that person, how you feel about that video, how you feel about that topic. You're in control of it. So if you choose to be upset about it, if you choose to be frustrated with it, that's because you chose to. Nobody else influenced that decision but you. It happens to everybody, right? That's kind of just how we are as people. We can't really escape that feeling. What we can't escape is the consequences that we may find ourselves, I guess, experiencing, because we allowed that feeling to get the best of us. So always remember this: the way you feel about something, the way you feel about someone, the way you feel about a topic, the way you feel about anything is ultimately up to you because you allowed it. Your actions are your actions, and people can influence your actions, but ultimately you are the one to pull the trigger on that action. So always think about that, because you're going to look back at it and think to yourself, I allowed that to happen. I let it happen. Self-control is another thing that we're going to talk about a lot here on this podcast, here on the forum. And I'm going to say that a lot: if you can control yourself and if you can conquer your thoughts, you can conquer anything. This overall story, this overall anecdote ties into the pillar of temperance, and that is one of the 4 pillars of Stoicism that we will be discussing here on out. And in case you don't know what temperance is, it's the practice of self-restraint. It's the practice of controlling oneself. You can think the word temper, controlling your temper, having temperance. As far as wisdom, courage, and justice, we will discuss those in later episodes. For your notes this afternoon, make sure you have temperance, self-control, and focusing on what you can and cannot control. Have that written down, because that's going to be significant in next week's episode. We're going to talk about what 5+ years of musical performance did for me and what it taught me about discipline. This was a table worth sitting at on the forum with Julian Soronas. I really appreciate you taking your time out of your week, out of your day, to really sit down, listen to, and or watch this podcast. Do me a favor, please click the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will have all my socials linked down in the description below. I've got new episodes coming out every Monday, 6 p.m. PST. Therefore, I will see you next week. Thank you and take care.